Hello, welcome. Today we will finally cover updates on various projects, Sudachi for Windows and Android, CEMU Android in its version 14, which brought several improvements, and also the tests I conducted with Uzuy X in its test version 0.5. And finally, since many are trying to play Lollipop Chainsaw, I ran some tests both on the emulators and the native PC version. Before we begin, make sure to hit the like button so this video can reach even more people. And if this is your first time here, consider subscribing to get all the latest updates. Let's start with Lollipop Chainsaw. The emulator versions for Nintendo Switch have low performance ports, and the native PC version was released at full price, which discouraged many players. Additionally, I noticed some censorship in the repop mode. On Android, the situation is even worse, as no project has managed to run the game successfully. So, if you only have an Android device and want to play, you'll need to wait a little longer. Both Sudachi and Rog X face issues with games made on the Unreal Engine, plus the Switch port is not the best. This results in audio delays, frequent crashes, FPS drops, and desynchronization of audio and subtitles, especially in Sudachi. Even the PC version suffers from these issues. The PC version, while having better graphic effects, lacks advanced graphic configuration options and FPS control, but it is still the best version available so far. Now, moving on to CEMU for Android, this emulator has surprised everyone with significant improvements in recent months. About a month and a half ago, practically all games were unplayable and had dark color issues. Now, in version 14, many of these problems have been fixed, but the emulator is still not perfect and needs more adjustments. A bug from version 7, where the D-pads didn't work with the DualShock 4, has been fixed, and now all functions are working normally for those using Sony's controller. Games like Super Mario 3D World and Mario Kart 8 now have the correct colors and have gained a bit more performance. However, in my tests, Mario Kart 8 still has the problem of infinite loading when changing stages. Tekken Tag Tournament 2 is still completely broken, with vertex explosions and various graphic problems, making the game unplayable. This causes slowdowns and overheating of the device. Bayonetta 2, even though it renders correctly, still has the problem of returning to the game selection screen right in the tutorial. This is the same error I encountered when testing version 7 earlier. Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze still has vertex explosions, but now it is possible to leave the first area with 3D graphics. However, the character is not rendered correctly, which hinders gameplay. Yoshi's Woolly World has had a significant performance boost, but there are still objects that do not render, like Yoshi's heads, piranha plants, and other scenery items. Even so, with the game's current speed, it can already be considered playable, despite these graphical defects, at least as far as I tested. Finally, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is still unable to fully take advantage of the hardware in the devices. However, on a Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, it is already possible to maintain an FPS rate above 14. In tests conducted with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, the game reached around 24 FPS. What do you think about the evolution of CEMU for Android? I believe that, with another month and a half of development, we might see Zelda Breath of the Wild running at an acceptable FPS rate on most devices. The progress of this project has really surprised me. For those wanting to get new versions, I'll leave a link in the comments to download directly from GitHub. You'll need to be logged in to access it. Now, speaking of Sudachi for Windows and Android, if you were expecting a big FPS boost, you might be disappointed. The updates in this version mainly consist of fixes for Super Bomberman R2, Animal Well, and Princess Peach Showtime, although the latter is still not fully fixed, as the game eventually crashes and drops to 0 FPS, which could result in the loss of unsaved progress. Additionally, a problem in Paper Mario, The Thousand Year Door, exclusive to AMD GPUs, which caused black screens, was resolved. Memory precision and scaling were also improved, but in tests with Uzuy, these changes had no practical impact on performance on PC. For those using the PC version, I recommend 1.0.8. As for Android users, version 1.0.9 fixes the issue of installing updates, DLCs, and mods. Previously, versions above 1.0.2 would freeze when trying to install new content. Before updating, remember to export your saves, as the data export function is broken. When I tried importing my data, the app crashed, and I had to reinstall all additional content. All the tests I'll mention now were done on the Android version. I won't be testing the Windows version in this video. I tested a few games that previously had performance issues, like Castlevania Dominus Collection. Now, The game runs very well at a steady 60 FPS, making this a great opportunity for anyone wanting to play these 3 titles ported from the Nintendo DS. The collection also offers additional features, like the ability to rewind a few seconds during gameplay and exclusive monster stats display. Another big update is that Dragon Ball FighterZ was fixed. To run it properly, you'll need a specific version and a hack fix, but after setting everything up, I was able to play 4 full matches without performance issues or crashes. The health bars were also fixed and now render correctly. If you want to know how to set up this game, I'll leave a tutorial video for you to watch later. For those facing problems with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and other emulators, know that on Sudachi, the game is running very well right now. I consider this the best way to play it for the time being. Those long freezes caused by the 32-bit JIT recompilers have practically disappeared. Although some freezes still happen, they are brief and much less frequent. Specifically, Pokemon Scarlet started crashing on my device, but I saw other creators testing it, and the game ran fine for them. So, you'll need to test it on your own device to see if it's playable. Pokemon Sword, on the other hand, is running very well, with a steady 30 FPS, though there may be random crashes during some battles. There was a small performance gain in Red Dead Redemption, with my device managing to stay between 20 and 30 FPS. In Zelda Breath of the Wild, there are still issues with rendering water, but overall, the game stays at 30 FPS most of the time, offering a very good experience for anyone with at least a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. On the other hand, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom still suffers from random squares appearing during gameplay. The most detrimental issue on my device was the RAM getting completely used up quickly, causing the game to freeze and close. A tip for those wanting to play Zelda Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom is to use the Revision 3 driver, which I'll leave in the files for this video. This driver offers the best performance for most GPUs. In newer drivers like Revision 8, these 2 games might not even start. Special thanks to Ryzen from our Discord for sharing this tip. Finally, I performed quick tests on Uzuy X, both on the official X4 version and the X5 test version, available to testers. Starting with the X4 version, I managed to run Dragon Ball FighterZ with the proper mods and updates. Mario Kart runs with more FPS than on Sudachi, but with more freezes. Honestly, I preferred Sudachi's performance for this game. Pokemon Sword also runs perfectly on X4, but without much difference compared to Sudachi. The game that really impressed me was Red Dead Redemption. Although there are still issues with some objects flickering or disappearing, the performance was excellent, maintaining 30 FPS outside cities, with drops to a maximum of 27 FPS. This is much better than Sudachi, which dropped to as low as 20 FPS. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom had similar performance to Sudachi, breaking the game after a few minutes of gameplay. However, I felt Uzuy X4 had more stutters compared to the other emulators I tested here. As for Uzuy X5, I'm still facing many issues. I can't install updates, DLCs, or mods, as the app closes without completing the installation. Mario Kart 8 runs better on X5 than on X4, but on my device, Sudachi still performed better. Pokemon Scarlet was at its most problematic version, crashing completely before closing the app. However, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom was where I had the best experience, as the game didn't crash once and delivered decent performance without overloading my device. It's worth noting that I needed to use the Revision 3 driver, as mentioned earlier. On the other hand, Red Dead Redemption had the worst performance of all the projects tested so far, with frequent drops below 20 FPS and struggling to stay at 14 FPS. In Zelda Breath of the Wild, performance fell short of expectations, staying below 30 FPS most of the time. Keep in mind that the X5 version I tested is in an experimental stage, and the final performance may differ in the official release. If you'd like to see a new comparison test between the latest Sudachi version and the latest stable Uzuy version, let me know in the comments. And that's all for today's tests, folks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.